and click there and. Why are you not looking right? Okay, we're good.
Call the Millwood Planning Commission of May 28, 2025 to order. First order of business is roll call. Commissioner Rickard.
Here.
Commissioner Beasy.
Here.
Commissioner Malter.
Here.
Commissioner Wu.
Here.
And Chairman Athey is here. We do have a quorum. Second order is approval of the meeting agenda. Does anybody have any changes? Or anything they'd like to add? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next order of business is approval of our April 30th meeting minutes. I don't know if it's important or not to note, but the one thing that I saw under public remarks, I did turn the meeting over to Commissioner Wu temporarily. I don't have it in the minutes that I did.
Yeah, the very first line of 5.
Any public remark?
No, it was temporarily taken over, so I could make, there's no note in there that says that.
Oh, you took it back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that's important or not, but it probably should be noted.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Anybody else have anything else?
The only thing I had, and this is so minute, approval of the meeting agenda. I seconded the motion and then voting yay, Ankeny, Commissioner Beasy, Rickard, and Wu. And I didn't get to, I voted
You didn't
yay.
get to vote?
I didn't get to vote.
His vote wasn't
So we know
counted.
you did.
Yeah. So,
Oh man, that swayed the whole election.
I know, sorry about that, you guys.
So another little fiddly
Yep.
is under Commissioner comments. My name probably shows up in here 5 or 6 times, but it's misspelled this once.
Oh, jeez. Sorry. Under Commissioner comments?
Yes. Commissioner Molitor commented on an article in the newspaper.
Oh,
Good
there.
catch.
Oh, down there. I was looking at the first one, I was like, no, that's right.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. Did we see that?
Doubled the wrong key.
I did.
Anything
Surprised I haven't
else?
done that before.
You're not the first person.
So then I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Yeah, I'll move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Okay, cool. That brings us to item number 4, action items, a periodic update, and I will turn it over to her.
okay. And when Lisa has a chance, I'll have her put it up on the screen for our audience tonight. Everybody else go to the market. Go ahead and hop on to land use. Final packet. Perfect. Okay, and I'll be going through this pretty quick. So. All right, so we are now into probably the heaviest lift of our comp plan update, the land use and the housing sections. So much of this is driven by the commerce requirements, and I just have to word it for Millwood and input the data. I mentioned to Commissioner Beasy last meeting that a lot has changed in the data. I was struggling with one of the charts in there and then realized it was because not all the units were counted. So little things like that. And so when in doubt, I have to use what Commerce provided. And while some data may seem inconsistent, it's because it may say it's from the 2023 ACS versus the 2020 census. So there's a lot of different data sources in this one, and a lot of data, as you can see. So Just a few on the first page, just a few little housekeeping things for Avenue, et cetera. Nothing.
May I ask a question on
Yes.
the first page now?
Yes.
And this is just for clarification. Those factors include Spokane Feltsfield Airport and its restrictions to development, the urban growth area critical. What impact does Feltsfield Airport have on our city? I mean, they're a mile away.
We are, and we'll actually cover that.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So
I
that
think
will
I
be
did see
covered.
something later on.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're in the flight pattern.
Okay.
Next page is the updated map.
So I had a question on that too, actually the same paragraph.
Okay.
So the factors includes Feldsfield restrictions, urban growth area, critical areas, open space corridors. What about the shoreline stuff? Should that be?
We could add it. I didn't change anything in that, but we can add it.
Right, yeah, I know some of this is
Yeah.
the way it was, but it seems like that's a factor.
Yeah, those
As
factors.
we try to make things more dense, we've decided along the river can't be more dense, so it is a,
Okay, so cross off and put open space corridors, comma, and shorelines?
yeah, shoreline, I don't know,
Shoreline management, I think, is
yeah, shoreline management
Area.
plan. Well,
plans or, yeah, whatever.
Areas. Okay. Added. Going, next page? Okay. All right, so, this is the, updated, land use and zoning map. Nothing changed on here other than it kept coming up, and that is where the, ACZ 5, Feltsfield overlay is in the city. And so it made a whole lot more sense to have it on the map, because that's how I did it during the LCA. So I asked Welchcomer to just add it to the map as a layer. That was the only change on this, so.
So that answers your question, Jay.
yeah.
And then we'll cover a little bit,
I
you know,
think
what it
I
is.
saw it later on.
Yeah, I was shocked that it came that far into town.
Yeah.
We had quite a struggle adopting that, because we were basically strong-armed into
Oh, I bet.
putting by the airport,
Sure,
which has a lot of power.
of course.
So this is their edict right here.
Okay.
Next is our brand new updated descriptions of each one of the zones. So, comp plans are the general plan of the city. They are the higher level, they are what you envision for the city. Development regulations is where we get down to the details of the lot, square footages, those kinds of things. The land use chapter was where I really started to see we were delving into more of the development regulation side of things. And in keeping with the higher level, what a comp plan should be, I rewrote this based on the direction that we need to go for the middle housing and how we want it to look. I will caveat that I accidentally used the word character. I apologize, I'll need to correct that. We need to say compatible in scale and form with single family houses. So the word character has to come out there. And I'll make that
I don't know
correction.
that you have to apologize to us
Oh. But I should have caught that. So for UR1 zone, as I discussed with neighborhood advocates and the other folks that I talked with, obviously it applies to the eastern portion of the city that is traditionally accommodated single-family detached homes on large lots with space for urban agriculture while allowing opportunities for infill development. The intent of this designation is to acknowledge the single-family residential building type as the primary use with the potential for accessory dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, cottage housing, and other small-scale housing forms that are compatible in scale and form with single-family houses. And then I provided some pictures of some of the existing units that are over there. Next one, and all the housing types are what I talked with neighborhood advocates about. UR2, this designation is the predominant residential land use in Millwood with a small area included in the Millwood Historic District. The intent of this designation is to promote a variety of small-scale housing types with moderate densities including single-family homes, accessory dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, townhouses. I added in fourplexes and courtyard apartments, cottage housing, and other small-scale housing forms in neighborhoods characterized by low traffic volumes, abundant trees, and other landscaping features with easy access to parks and other recreational opportunities.
So, this one, this probably represents the hugest threat to Millwood as it currently is that I have seen since I moved here in the 70s. This is huge to take our core single-family housing designation that has always been primarily about the single-family house, and to change it and say the intent is to promote a variety, including triplexes, townhouses, fourplexes, courtyard apartments, and cottage housing. It's just a complete turnaround from what, and I didn't see anything in the community survey that indicated anybody wanted this or was suggesting it. So I'm certainly not comfortable just putting it in there without a whole lot of community outreach about it, because it's everything. It's just huge.
Well, the accepted housing types did go up to about this level, where we started having a downturn in the survey was the multifamily, the temporary housing, but we have to accommodate for it. And there was a couple other types in there, but these are all still the smaller
But
scale.
nothing said that the intent of that was to put in, to encourage apartments.
So can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So we did talk about increasing our density like this whole time. Where would we put that? If it's not in the largest area of space of
Traditionally, UR3 has been where that would go. Now,
very
we've
low.
got a small UR3, maybe we should look at increasing UR3 in size. Maybe we should put more stuff into it. But to say everywhere in Millwood that was planned from day one as planned communities to be single-family units with historic housing stock, and to say no, from now the intent of that area is to promote apartments. It's just huge.
We're not promoting apartments.
Well, it says the intent of this designation is to promote a variety of small-scale housing types,
With moderate densities.
including triplexes, townhouses,
Yeah.
fourplexes, courtyard apartments,
Courtyard, yeah.
and cottage housing.
Do you know what a courtyard apartment is? We already have them. Yeah, the U shape. We already have them over, there's some by Joe's and Whistlepunk over
oh
there.
yeah, right behind
off of Frederick.
Right, in the UR3.
There's
right.
also some in the UR2. Let's see. There's a variety throughout the city that were in here. They're brick, I believe. There were some that were like a board and batten look. I have to look exactly where they're at. But the whole purpose of the Commerce Guidance is to incorporate middle housing. And these are all middle housing types. They're not multifamily level, and they're not as high as what UR3 goes. UR3 is the next level with adding in the highest density, meaning 5plexes, 6plexes, stacked flats, and multifamily units. And actually accommodating single family, because we already have some in there.
Right, yeah, I mean, this still, to me, the intent is more like you have for UR1, is to recognize the single-family house
Okay.
while giving opportunities for these other things.
So your problem is with the word intent.
Well, part of it is the word intent, to take that primary zoning area and to make so much of it be about apartments. I mean, all these people who bought these small, modest size 1950s, mid-century
On smaller
modern-
lots, yes.
on
Yeah,
mid-sized lots, I mean, small, large, whatever.
compared to UR1, yeah.
Right, compared to UR1.
Yeah.
Never expected to live across the street from cottage apartments or,
Well,
any of these things, and it's, you know, and this is something that's not, we have a hearing and we talk about it, we look at this design and see if this design fits. This is something that they come into you as the planner and say, okay, we're gonna do this. We bought these two houses in the UR2, and we've decided we're gonna take them out and put in apartments. And you have to say yes, because it's in the comp plan and it's in the
so
zone.
you don't like, it's the intent is the word and courtyard apartments are the two that you have.
Cottage housing,
Well, cottage is allowed in UR1 too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not,
Yeah.
and it's not just about being loud, it's about promoting it and about making it so easy. I mean, it's one thing to say, we will entertain the idea with the hearing and people getting involved. It's a different thing to just say,
So that's the problem, Bobby, is under the new commerce requirements, middle housing can't be like a conditional use permit. Multifamily still can, like in the UR1, but middle housing has to be permitted outright.
so middle housing's boundaries are what? Size-wise?
We actually cover that in, can I pause that, because we do cover it in the housing section. So I took your notes down, let me take a look at how I could possibly reword this a little bit for the next meeting. Does that work okay?
That's a step.
Okay.
Good point.
I think we need to get more community involved too, because when they answered those questions, I don't think they had in mind those, well, like there's 3 houses across the street from Bill that are little tiny houses
Mm-hmm.
on a modest lot. Somebody could just buy those up and put in apartment complexes, you know, a series of fourplexes or,
But those aren't apartments, fourplexes are not apartments. So we gotta get under this correct terminology for middle housing versus multifamily
okay, they
apartments.
could put in a couple of courtyard apartments in those. If you wanna get hung up on the word apartments or.
Yeah,
or,
I
you know,
just,
I mean,
yeah, I mean courtyard
Is this
apartments are still pretty
what you
small
bought
scale.
into when you bought that property? You looked at the zoning code and you thought, oh, I'm pretty well protected from that. And then we come in and just change a little bit of verbiage and all of a sudden, you know, I think we need to be careful of that.
Okay, I'll take a look at that for a possible rewording a little bit.
So that just brings up a question for me then. So under the scenario that she just explained,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so if somebody buys up a couple of lots, they wanna put some cottage apartments on it,
Mm-hmm.
they'd have to get the lots replatted, right?
Possibly.
Okay, so wouldn't that come before plan?
No.
Then, would it come before development?
So if it falls under a short plat, it would be an administrative function with public notice.
Okay.
If it falls under
So
a
then, so let
subdivision.
me stop you there.
Oh.
So comes under public notice, so then public comment would be accepted,
Yes,
okay? So it could be dealt with at that time.
yes,
Okay?
but you
On
can't.
the flip
yeah.
side, okay, just wanna throw this out.
Okay,
Okay, some of the people that maybe have those houses now may look at this as their golden opportunity as an investment, because they could put an ADU there,
Oh,
or
yeah.
they could do that themselves, okay? I mean, and I probably, if I remember right when we talked, a lot of this verbiage in here that's been removed is in the development standards. So
Yeah.
we're gonna get to that eventually, but
yeah,
just something that, I just wanna make sure that it's not just somebody's gonna come in and apply for a demolition permit, tear them down, and then apply for a building permit, and it's just all, nobody gets nobody, at least there's a hearing, there's a process.
Well,
Public
that's
comment, there's a public comment.
questionable that there would be, if they all happen to fit on one lot. There's nothing.
well, there's, even if it's a unit lot subdivision, it's at a minimum a short plat
Well,
process.
it's not a subdivision if it's apartments, is it?
If it's all in one lot, then no, it would just be the permitted use of
They
a
just
courtyard apartment.
tear it down and
Yeah.
put them in. So no, there are scenarios here where there would be no input, and even in an input like combining 2 lots, whether there'd be anything that having input could make a difference on, or whether it's something that you'd be pretty well required to just allow.
Mhm.
So I think we need to be very careful, or we'll end up like with, the trailer park scenario, where, gee, I didn't think we could do that, you know,
Right.
how did that happen?
Right.
Cause you zoned for it,
But
yeah.
we're also
Well,
tasked
that's
with
what we're
meeting,
talking about here.
we're also tasked with meeting the requirements that the state has given us.
Yes, we
As far
are,
as additional housing units.
yes,
Okay.
but I think we need to be open-minded in how we meet those, and not just say, let's take our largest, most central zoning classification and turn it into apartments are okay with that. You know,
Next one, the UR3, so the higher density. This designation is located throughout Millwood and it's intended as a buffer between the areas of the city zone for low-density residential and the busiest commercial areas throughout the city. It allows for higher density middle housing and multifamily housing up to 2 stories, including 5-plexes, 6-plexes, stacked flats, and multifamily units while accommodating existing single-family uses and allowing accessory dwelling units. The high-density residential district offers the highest density residential uses on the smallest lots located on or close to major arterials and providing easy access to public services and transit. And then examples provided.
okay, one question on this.
Mm-hmm.
The accommodating existing single-family uses, does that mean that we are not going to allow someone to build a single-family house in a UR3 from here on out?
That is up to you guys when we hit the development regulations, if you wanna put it as a permitted use or not. Per the land capacity analysis, single-family uses are an underutilized land use in a multifamily zone. That was based on the capacity guidance. So I classified them as underutilized, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have an opinion on that one, I'm just trying to.
And so that all depends, based on this wording, it can go either way. And it's a decision that has to be made at, time of the development regulations. I will encourage you to think long and hard about it though, because the next example we're gonna talk about in C1, there was a duplex put in an area that probably should have had a higher density. And it's, the picture is in here. So if that happens too much, we will not meet our allocations, so.
So, something just popped in me, I wanna back up to the UR2 just real quick.
Mhm.
Okay, based on some of the things that Bobby said. And she's looking for more public comment, more public input, and I'm okay with that. So we have a public hearing, and I realize that time is of the essence, and we've got some hard drop dead dates to get things done. So, let's say we have a public hearing and we get 100 people out here, and they're all opposed to this.
In September, we'll say, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just whenever, but they're all just, they say, no, this is not what we want. Can you write in it, hey, the town has spoken?
We can.
Okay.
We could take out courtyard apartments, for example,
Okay,
as long as we still have opportunities to meet our
okay,
requirements.
okay.
So like if we expanded UR3 a little bit and put more of these in there, would that meet?
Or another option, so I hadn't looked on expanding the zones, we've kind of gone a little bit past that point. When I talked, in the interviews and stuff, it sounded like we could do it through the text and not have to expand, the zones. So as of now, I stated Millwood wasn't changing our zones, that would set us back a lot if we did that. What we can do though, is just like we have in UR1, you could add the option of, instead of using the word courtyard apartments, just use multifamily as another conditional use permit. So if you want it to go to a hearing, that could be an option. And then incorporate courtyard apartments in UR3.
That would be sliding in the right direction anyway.
Okay.
Thank you. So that brings us to C1.
Okay. All right, so C1, General Commercial District, is intended for large-scale auto-oriented commercial uses located primarily along major arterials up to 3 stories. And I'm putting the stories in here in the zones so that we had scale and form ideas. Businesses located and nothing changed, by the way, that's what it's allowed now. Businesses located in this zone provide goods and services to customers throughout the region. A variety of existing residential development is located in this zone. However, new residential will focus on higher density and mixed use with commercial, as well as allowing hotels and temporary emergency housing to meet Washington state requirements. Hotels are currently allowed in C1 and I1, and so that was carried over.
We don't have any in Millwood,
No.
do we?
We don't.
Just one quick question.
Yes.
Grocery stores and big box retail stores are examples. Why was that struck? I mean, shouldn't that just be?
Because we really
Example.
talked about it being a large-scale auto-oriented commercial uses is how I reworded it, instead of calling out individual uses. That's where it gives us more flexibility in the development regulations and the zoning matrix.
Okay.
Would those be in there? Yes. C2. Now, I was actually, when I read this, I was very surprised with the small amount of wording for C2, yet in the development code, we have this huge paragraph all about C2, and I'm like, that needs to be here. So that's what I did. I took what was in the development code and essentially put it here. So the low-intensity commercial mixed-use district is intended to provide housing opportunities and retail and professional services to a limited trade area. The zone should be developed on pedestrian scale to accommodate neighborhood and local community shopping needs, to provide variety in housing, and to create recreation opportunities without negatively impacting adjoining neighborhoods. C2 zones shall be grouped along arterials and within 1/4 mile of a public transit route and should be designed to accommodate pedestrians. The zone should create an urban neighborhood and, in addition, serve several neighborhoods within walking distance or within a few miles, allowing for short driving distances from home to the zone. The zone should serve as a buffer between residential zones and arterial roads, thereby providing an appropriate land use transition. Small retail and service businesses up to 3 stories and apartments or other living quarters will be encouraged in mixed-use structures up to 4 stories for a more diverse environment. The central portion of the district along Argonne Road is included in the Millwood Historic District. Automobile-related uses such as drive-up windows would be discouraged. And again, that's a form. That's why I went ahead and left that wording in there.
So I'm a little confused about the 3 stories versus the 4 stories.
Currently in our code, if you have mixed use included, you can go 4 stories. If you don't have mixed use, it's 3 stories.
I think there is a number of feet also.
45, I
Specified.
believe.
So I'm wondering, why do we not have 4 stories in C1?
We can, and I went back and forth, but I didn't want to be the one to propose that. I will be happy to change it to 4 stories if you would like. And it's a smart use of the land.
I don't see any reason to.
I think that'd be completely appropriate.
Okay. Up to 4 stories. Okay, it is updated.
I have a question on C2.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle there where it talks about, where was it? Within a 1/4 mile. That's it.
Of a public transit route?
In addition, serves several neighborhoods within walking distance or within a few miles.
Mhm.
Is that phrase intended to make within walking distance and a few miles the same thing?
Let's see.
No, because
No, or,
it continues on to say allowing for a short driving
Yeah.
distance. So the few miles is a short driving distance.
yeah, anything over a 1/2 mile is usually considered a not walkable. And so you use the 1/2 mile as your, kind of your standard. Yeah. Anything else on that one?
So just Scribner kind of thing. Businesses up to 3 stories dash A and apartments, what's the dash A about?
Businesses up to, where am I
I
at?
think the
Small
A was
retail and
struck.
service business, oh, that's a strikeout.
Yeah, that was struck. That was
Oh,
struck.
okay.
3
Yeah.
stories
It's right
and
there.
apartments.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
It'll be much cleaner when we take the track changes out.
okay.
And I've got another question too. Within 1/4 mile of a public transit route, we can't control that if the transit company makes a change.
But we can use this to support them keeping the routes that we have, or even expanding upon them.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I1, the light industrial district is intended for small to medium intensity industrial uses up to 4 stories that produce little to no noise or environmental emissions. This zone allows for hotels and temporary emergency housing to meet Washington state requirements. That one was pretty simple. When we get into the housing, I used I1 as part of the analysis because it's a pretty small area, and I wanted to make sure I beat up C2 pretty good, or C1, I'm sorry. So I wanted to make sure that we actually had enough, so I used I1, as if we had a hotel going in there or something.
So aside from, I guess maybe hotels, I-1 doesn't allow any residential.
No,
It's tiny.
it's just a small section on Trent.
It's just this little itty bitty fella.
So why not?
You don't usually want to give up your industrial land for housing.
And do you want a house in the middle of industrial land?
Oh, I don't. But then again, we have to comply with the Department of Commerce's requirements, so.
Well, we are using it as our LCA for the emergency
Emergencies.
housing.
They prefer we have a hotel there than an individual house.
Yeah.
What kind of choice is that? Okay.
And then I2, which is obviously the paper mill, there was so little information on it that I really was thinking about this and talking with folks, and I rewrote it a little bit because it is a historic component of the city. It's grandfathered, it's what it is kind of thing. But if they were ever to expand the uses, like towards Argonne, for example, or something, that would make a major effect on the historic district. So when you're thinking of scale and form, how do you want that that parcel essentially to play into the adjoining neighborhoods? So those are the kinds of things I was thinking of when I wrote this. So the manufacturing industrial designation, also known as the paper mill alternative zone for the historic Inland Empire paper mill, allows up to 4 stories and is intended to preserve the existing use of the property without negatively affecting the aesthetics of the Argonne Road corridor and the Millwood Historic District, nor the quality of life for surrounding residences and businesses. If the site is abandoned, future uses would be mixed-use commercial, residential, and light industrial. And then I put pictures in of it.
In a different document, didn't we have something that said that if they abandoned that a site development plan, approved one had to be required?
Yes,
Can we
that's
put
part of the development regulations.
that wording in here?
What we did as far as, if the site is abandoned, future uses would be mixed-use commercial, residential, and light industrial. And then you go to the development code and go through the rezoning process and everything.
But it was the one thing we had that would have a development plan.
Yes, it actually talks about it has to be rezoned to one of those zones.
Right.
Yeah.
And that there,
And it would most likely default to the I1 or I think it was I1. I have to look in the development regulations.
If the whole site is abandoned, does it have to all fall into one's other zoning?
No, I think the development regulations do allow for multiple. I have to go back and look, I can't remember. It's spelled out pretty in-depth in the development regulations.
so then the other thing is, there is talk of them putting in another more industrial type building where they're grass and closer to Argonne.
Oh, okay. So
So
this
does
would come into
this-
play to make sure the aesthetics are maintained then.
Yeah, cause that could be not pleasant
You
looking.
could end up with a tunnel for Argonne. Which is not.
Absolutely.
That's actually, because I wanted to make sure everybody understood why I tied it together. The next page, I couldn't fit it on the one page, the next page shows the intersection and how that plays into the historic downtown.
Yeah, it's really
Of course,
pretty.
this is going to be in 3 months, entirely different. All
I'll
these-
get it, if I can, I'm
All
gonna
these
get another
trees are gonna
picture.
be gone, it's going to be a lot more pavement, it's not gonna be this kind of pretty.
They're not that much, well, I'm gonna update the picture if I can, if this hasn't been adopted when that project's complete.
Yeah, it's gonna be sad, ugly and sad, yes.
Maybe it'll look nice, you guys.
Yeah.
I'm
There'll be a nice new
excited
pathway.
for the pathway. It's important to me.
Yeah,
The pathway
Pathway
is,
is important.
there's a handful of things
Yes.
that are gains,
Yeah.
that's one of them.
Hopefully we can at least replant some beautiful trees, so in a little bit of
The
time.
mayor has assured me there is no room to put more trees back in. Now, I don't know if he was just having a bad day when he assured me of that, or
Well,
if
maybe we
that's
should all
true,
talk to the
but-
mayor together.
Got a lot of room for more trees. maybe.
Seems like there's plenty of room for trees.
Yeah, I would.
I don't know why the paper company wouldn't plant more trees for us to look at.
Well, if they're putting it in the building, they won't.
Touche.
Let's move on.
yeah.
Let's see.
Okay,
Let's not get hung up
so
on-
public reserve, P1, nothing changed here, public reserve for public facilities, utilities, parks, including a pedestrian link between parks and open space, and I just added 2 pictures. Okay. Next, I'm gonna skip over this pretty quick, because this is all from the land capacity analysis that we reviewed back in, December. And I will jump to packet page 14.
Okay, so hold on 1 second.
Yes.
Before you do that, does anybody have any questions on page 59, 60, or 61?
Not today.
Okay.
Let's at least do that when we're skipping ahead.
Yes.
please. Thank you.
So the very bottom of page 61, missing middle housing type examples. So again, trying to base this on form and scale so that everybody can envision what these are. Commerce provided some nice guidance, and you've seen some of these last July when we went through and looked at the middle housing types. At the top of page 62 is a graphic that shows on the left detached single-family homes. On the far right is more of a mid-rise, more of an urban multifamily higher than us. And in the middle is what is considered missing middle housing. So duplex, side by side or stacked, either one. Fourplex, courtyard buildings, cottage court, townhouses, multiplex medium. I don't quite agree with that one for Millwood. I put that in the multifamily. Triple stacked and live work. And live work could be easily incorporated into like the mixed use buildings in C2 and stuff. And what the live work is, if you're not familiar, is essentially it's either 2-story, but it's all one unit, where you have like an office or studio on the first floor and your living area above, but it's all one unit. Or it's a single unit that may have like an office or meeting space up front and then the living area in the back. Those are what live works are. Figure 5.3 are some example middle housing images, just examples, that's all these are. The first grouping is duplex, triplex, and fourplex. And the interesting thing about this is the fourplex is the bottom one. You'd never know. It looks just like a single family home.
But I'd point out, is this what you guys want across the street from you?
Yeah,
Because that's what we're talking about.
It works in some areas, like what they're building up on Upriver, past like Beacon. Have you gone that way?
Oh, yes, yes,
That's kind of neat. Have you seen those buildings? But
Right.
that's in a
Yeah.
huge development.
but that isn't our little
It's not on our
flattered
block.
area and,
Yeah.
you know, and it's not infill, it's new stuff.
yeah, there are some beautiful buildings.
Yeah.
And then the next
But on
one.
the flip side, if there was an existing house like that in Millwood that I owned,
And you turned it into a fourplex.
I might wanna turn it into a fourplex.
Oh,
And
the
there already are
fourplex
some.
is not my question, it's the top ones, the stacked.
Okay.
So it's a duplex on the upper right,
The stacked.
and that's a
triplex.
triplex, just a stacked
Yeah.
triplex, yeah. Cottage housing is the top of the next page, and, very similar honestly to kind of the designs that Magnolia was using with the center courtyard. And then, this one is obviously, little detached cottages with front porches and everything. Townhouses, I'll say that I didn't like this example, but I couldn't find a better one. These are too modern for Millwood. I know we have some form and scale examples like this. It's actually a single family home, but they were a little too modern. If I can find a better one, or if anybody has a better one, I'd rather sub it in. Even possibly taking a picture of ones in Liberty Lake or something that have the porches and stuff. These are a little modern. And then courtyard apartments, which the brick one on the right is very similar to one of the ones that we have here.
So where's this one that we have?
We have a couple of them. I'd have to pull it up on the LCA, but I think two of them are brick, and I think one is like a board and batten look. And I think, I don't want to misspeak. I thought one was off of Frederick. Can you remember the brick courtyard apartments? Are those off of Frederick?
Yeah, it's just right here on this side of Frederick.
This side of Frederick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's UR3. Yeah.
Part of those ones are, yes. And then there was another one that's like a board and batten look. I'd have to go back to the LCA to remember where it was. And then the population and housing growth isn't anything you haven't heard before. It was all consistent with what's up top in the first 4 chapters.
So I think I had a question on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard to read there, but the or. Oh, the fractions, yes.
We were getting down there. That's the decision. I'm hoping actually you guys will vote tonight so we know which way to go, because I have to know how we're gonna go. I've gone the conservative side, which is how I'm guessing that it will go, but if you go to the blue, it opens things up more. But we will get to that here in just a second. So bulk density standards overall stayed the same. I just had to convert them to the 1. And this is exactly the same as what we did in the LCA when we looked at all the numbers. So instead of being 2 units per 10,000, it's 1 per 5,000. UR3, 1 per 2,500 square feet. I just corrected the wording to make them read the same. UR2, since we had 2 different standards, I took the average between the two. So half of 7,200 is 1 per 3,600. So again, it goes from a lower density to a moderate density to a higher density.
Which one are you looking at?
The bulk density table.
17.
Page 64.
Oh,
Yes,
yes,
64.
page 64.
Sorry.
Okay, got it, thanks.
Okay. And then the big star and hoping to call for a vote is, right now, I have accessory dwelling units are counted towards the unit density in UR1, UR2, and UR3. There is an exclusion for new housing in existing buildings. We can't touch that. But there is an option that you can not count ADUs towards unit density. I did not anticipate Millwood wanted to go that direction, so I counted them towards unit density.
So that would help us get the numbers we need to get to.
It would, yes.
So explain what that means.
What that means is I'm real familiar with UR1 now. In UR1, you have 1 dwelling unit per 5,000 square feet. If you have a 5,000 square foot lot, okay, we don't, but I'm using it for simple math. If you had a 5,000 square foot lot and you have a single family home on that, and it's a conforming lot, you have to allow 2 ADUs no matter what, okay? They're at max, all right? They can't add anything else. They can't convert that single family to a duplex, for example. If you don't have ADUs counting, and let's say it's a 10,000 square foot lot now. So you have a single family home on a 10,000 square foot lot and you have 2 ADUs, you could then convert that single family home to a duplex because the ADUs do not count towards the unit density. I worded it where they do, because as a tier 3 city, we were allowed to choose an option of the ADUs count or they don't. And, that's why I said in like the LCA that it'd be up to 2 or 3 units per lot, cause it depended on which way you went. I went the conservative way and don't have them county. If you change that, then I'd have to go through and change all the LCA, all the, HAP tables and everything. My anticipation was you wouldn't wanna go that direction.
Okay. Now, if we count them, that cuts down on,
It doesn't help as much as you think, and
but that's the direction it goes.
it would,
So,
save that question until we get, I'll come back to that
Okay,
question if I
but-
can.
so I'm hearing almost two different things from you, and I'm sure it's my hearing, not what you're saying, but I'm confused. So if we count the ADUs,
Yes,
then that lot already has enough units on it that
They
we
can't do
say
any
it's
more.
his maximum, and we don't allow any more.
yes,
If we don't count the ADUs, we say, oh, there's plenty of room to put,
they could convert
Another
the
unit.
single family to,
yeah,
Yeah, essentially putting more people on one lot.
exactly.
yes,
Exactly, so.
Yeah.
Do we probably want to have fewer people on one lot, less density? I mean, to me, an ADU is a unit that you have people living in, why shouldn't it count?
I mean,
Right, it should count.
Yeah, exactly.
and that's how I did it,
That makes sense.
okay? Good, yeah, I guessed right. Now, the second part to this is, and, this came up, as a request from council, but we had to do it anyway, because there is no definition of how density is calculated in Millwood. So, I pulled 2 example ways to do it. The blue is the more modern, maximizing, this is more of the Spokane way, we'll say that. You're maximizing the land. These would be the same people that would not count the ADUs towards the density, most likely. You're using, even if it's a fraction, so if you come in at 5.1, it would round up to 6. It was not my anticipation that is what Millwood would want, so I did not calculate that way. If you choose to calculate that way, it gives us bonus room. Instead, I went with the green method, which is how I've done it in all my other previous times, where it is simple math. When calculating density results in a fraction, fractions of 0.5 or greater are rounded up. So if it's 5.5, it's rounded to 6. If it's 5.4, it's rounded down to 5. That is how the green functions. That is how I calculated it for our HAP tables.
Now there is a third method, right?
Actually, I can't say I've ever seen anybody use it. And that is the exact opposite of the blue.
It's what's used in every other whole thing.
I know it's
out
used
there.
in healthcare.
It's used in healthcare, it's
Yeah.
used in every retail store. We sell cookies for 50 cents a piece. Somebody comes with 75 cents, we don't say, oh, that's okay, you can have 2, that's enough. We say, no, that's not enough for 2 cookies, you need to have 100 cents to have 2 cookies. So, I mean, that's the general way of the world. If you don't have enough for that next unit, you don't get the next unit.
It's not the way of the planning world, though. Yeah, I looked at other examples, and I can tell you in Liberty Lake, it was the green. I know that. In Spokane, it's more the blue. Most jurisdictions that I looked at are the green. And I didn't see any that rounded down no matter what.
You're not really rounding down, you're saying you don't have enough to have room for the upper number, so you were stuck with the lower number.
The other thing I will caveat is in the state of Washington with the current guidance based on maximizing densities and everything, I don't know if we could even round down. The green we can do. I know we can do that. I do not know how they would look at us rounding down, and it would affect every chart throughout the housing section when we get there. Because I had to use a method, so I used the green method.
Cause like if we round down, we'll be really discouraging people in a whole from building and progressing. We don't wanna do that either.
Oh, we ran into this on the Magnolia.
It was on Magnolia Village, I used the green method.
And even that was questioned because they didn't quite have enough room for that extra unit. But they got it because of the green. Now, if it had been the blue, they might have got a couple of extra and it was just too much.
No, it would have come out the same, it would have been the 17 units.
But you could run into a situation where there just really is not enough room for that extra unit. And you're allowing it because they have 3 feet more land than.
Well, they still had to meet their lot coverage and everything, so whether or not the bulk density allows it, if the lot coverage didn't allow it in there, then they couldn't have, I mean, what was originally proposed, I'll use Magnolia, I think it was 21 was originally
It was
proposed.
crazy.
When I utilized the bulk density and the lot coverage and the other development standards, it brought it down to 17 with, I think it was 16.7, so it was rounded to 17. I hope that was right, 16.7, but it's pretty close.
Good arguments.
So this is the one that I was hoping, we're all in agreement on the ADU, we're good there. This is the one I'm hoping to call for a vote between the blue and the green,
You want us to do that now?
if you can. Because it affects the entire chapter, so we gotta get it nailed now, because everything's been built on the green.
Okay, so we can word a motion correctly. Does anybody have a strong opinion either way on blue or green?
I feel the green makes a lot more sense. I think that it fits the rest of the world for one thing. Nowhere do you have an extra 1% and you get to go all the way round up.
I agree with Bobby.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bobby.
Okay, so I am, and I agree too, so I'll entertain a motion that we approve the green method for calculation purposes.
A second?
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, thank you very much. Green method. So you will no longer see the blue, I'll pull it out of there.
What are we gonna do when we don't have pennies anymore?
Get rid of the nickel too.
That's an issue. That is an issue. We'll have to sort through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Arguments on both sides of that too. Who takes the hit?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Coming back to Jay's question, so now that you saw the dash line on the zoning map, this is why you see the dash line, it's because it's the outer boundary of the traffic pattern zone 5. So essentially the planes probably loop in, I believe is what they do to come into the land, you know where the takeoff.
So how does that affect our development in that area that,
It basically says anytime something's proposed, I have to consult with them.
Well, it also has rules like West Valley would not be able to be built where it currently is.
Yeah, there's certain assembly type uses you can't have.
So there are certain density and types of uses. You
Isn't it-
can't put a hotel.
Isn't it they want low density in case of an emergency or a crash? They don't want
Yeah, it's a crash zone.
to kill people.
I just don't wanna call it a crash zone, but
Yeah.
essentially,
Essentially it is.
yeah.
And that was part of the other reason that I used the I-1 for the emergency housing analysis, because there is C1 that's in this zone, and somebody could call out, well, you can't guarantee that they could build a hotel there unless you come up with a way to do it with Fells Field. That is a valid point, depending on the height, so I used I-1.
all right, thank you.
Okay. And I just updated the description to be more consistent. Oh, and added in, it's approximately 100 acres plus 30 acres of right of way from the LCA. Okay, urban growth area, just updated the resolution to the current resolution, and updated the data that was on there. And then also called out, instead of just a designated UGA, it's the Valley UGA. I will caveat one thing on this, and we don't know until it goes forward. Right now, each jurisdiction is stating with the county whether or not we need to expand our UGAs. Millwood does not. We already told them that. Liberty Lake does not. Nobody in here has said they do, so I do not think anything will change in the Valley UGA other than it could be reduced in order to give more UGA to like Airway Heights, for example. That's how it has to work now with the agreement on UGAs. So, if they can't justify an expansion of the UGA, then you have to take some out to expand the areas that need it. So I may have to update this map, like at the last minute, if it changes, but it doesn't affect Millwood, so.
Well, if we said, not that we, but if we said we wanted to expand the UGA, where would we expand to?
Past Stan Park. We had discussions about it, and we looked into it.
Is
and-
that
and
not
it
a
was-
UGA already?
It is, but we were looking at whether we could get it assigned to us.
Oh,
And it's all residential, it's all developed, so.
Right, but.
Yeah.
there-
It's a
there
lot
were
like
a lot of
the,
advantages and some,
okay, so conversely, if they say they wanna take some UGA from us,
we don't
what
have
would
any.
they take?
We don't have any.
it's a Valley UGA.
It's what?
This is the Valley UGA, so it's not ours, it's not City of Spokane Valleys, it's just the Valley UGA.
Yeah, we don't have a UGA, so they can't take it from us.
I think I usually
That's
worded
okay.
it in here that UGA is our boundary. Yeah.
Cause they would.
So I've got, I know this is what was in here before, but just in the interest of maybe correcting things. That second paragraph, currently City of Millwood has not identified outside the city limits that it is interested in or needs to annex. Seems like there's, like,
Oh, yeah.
sentence-wise, there should be an in there.
Okay.
I'm going off memory, Bobby.
Uh-oh.
I believe at one time we talked about expanding eventually to Bigelow Gulch.
We did.
Okay. Where's that fit into this?
It gives
We
us
beat
the
that up
option
pretty
still.
hard.
So, the way we have it worded is, furthermore, let's see. However, in the future, if the city does decide to expand its municipal boundaries, then growth would need to occur to the north of the city across the Spokane River, as the city is surrounded by Spokane Valley to the east, south, and west. Spokane County has designated a fairly large area to the north as a designated UGA. That's why I called it out, referred to as the valley.
No, it's spelled out. Perfect,
Yeah.
good, great, thank you.
All right, and then, just a few tweaks on the future land use, and a consideration on Millwood will continue to consider ways to creatively implement land use practices in a way that accommodates all socioeconomic groups and reduce environmental risks imposed by climate change and wildfires, consistent with Chapter 12, Climate Change and Resiliency, which is to come. Map 5-1 identifies the land use and zoning for the city of Millwood. Originally, we had it like duplicated, and I'm like, why would we do that? It takes up a lot of room, so I just referenced it.
Okay, so that paragraph in red, underlined there, we'll continue to consider ways to implement land use practices in a way that accommodates all socioeconomic groups and reduces environmental risk.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on that one?
Above it there,
Mm-hmm.
we crossed out zone within the city boundary and allow for new growth within the currently zoned industrial manufacturing period? Or should that zone stay in there?
Having zoned and zone, that's what I wasn't sure.
Yeah, but it just,
The way I word it was, allow for new growth within the currently zoned industrial manufacturing. But I can leave zone in there if you want me to.
currently, within the current industrial
There we go.
manufacturing zone. Yeah.
Okay. All right, critical areas, nothing changed other than calling out the new SMP. Map's the same. Oh, map 5 dash renumbered it, but. And on policy direction, page 73, packet page 26, I just added the word "and middle housing," because that was what, Millwood has been lacking, was it went from single family, and then you had duplexes, to multifamily. And the middle was what we were, lacking.
So.
And that's consistent with the policies that we wrote.
There was, I'm having an issue with the sentence structure of policy direction. Always help guide the citizens' vision for the future. Allow enhancing and densifying our business district. I mean, it could be fixed by allowing enhancement and densification of the business districts.
Okay?
You see where it's,
Yeah.
it's just a little awkward.
Allowing enhancement?
Yeah, densification.
Enhancement. And densification.
Yeah. And then they're all ING words in that list and they work together.
Of the business districts. Of the business districts along Trent Avenue and Argonne Road, providing new opportunities for multifamily and middle housing and protecting environmentally critical areas, comma, will help to shape Millwood into the community it has envisioned.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright. Okay, housing. Anybody need a break? Alright,
Yeah, and we've got far more than one meeting's worth of stuff, I think.
yeah, so, and we'll cover this again at the next meeting along with transportation and stuff. The housing section has been written to make sure I check the boxes in the comprehensive plan checklist, the requirements for updating the comp plan. Also to update it to the current GMA requirements, that's why you see all the red in here. I literally took the GMA requirements and pasted it in here. And then incorporating the requirements that Commerce put in, well, Commerce did, that is now in state law, and what Commerce provided guidance on for the different accommodations by income type. I also, as we go through here, have submitted these charts to Commerce. We've had discussion. I added some additional clarifications, added an additional chart, and it looks like we're clear on those. So Commerce has reviewed that. All right, so I'm not going to read the GMA requirements because they are word for word on how they are. Housing demographics. This is the table that I struggled with, and Bobby and I talked a little bit about it after the last meeting. I couldn't figure out why the unit counts didn't match what I had. And it's because it only had single family, multifamily, and mobile manufactured homes that actually need to be considered as single family unless it was in a manufactured home park. Didn't have duplex, didn't have triplex, didn't have fourplex, didn't have ADUs. That's a lot of the reason it didn't make sense. So I kept it in here for historical component and then jumped down to page 77, the second paragraph. According to the 2020 census, there are a total of 821 housing units in Millwood. This is the data that was carried forward with Commerce. 768 units, or 93.5%, are occupied, and 53, or 6.5%, are vacant. And then what it consisted of, which is what I just went over. Now we jump to some data from the 2023 American Community Survey. Then we go down 2016 versus 2023 to do a comparison to what we already had previously. Vacancy rates, 2016 versus 2020. There was only so much data in certain categories, so that's why you're seeing it jump. Summer 2020, summer 2023, but I did everything I could to compare it to what we had in here originally. And then I'm not gonna cover this RDI because we're gonna go over it in detail in the RDI analysis. So let me hop over those and jump back onto rental affordability. That's covered a lot in RDI too. I'm gonna highlight a little bit, bottom of page 82 or packet page 35. I knew the question would come up on the mismatch on where we have surplus and shortfalls, etc. So the answer to that is shortfalls and surpluses suggest a mismatch between the rental housing need and availability. A surplus indicates that either a lower income household is experiencing housing cost burden by paying more than 30% of its income on housing, or a higher income household is down renting by paying less than they can afford in rental housing. High rates of down renting by moderate income households are associated with an undersupply of entry-level homeownership opportunities. That is huge here.
Now,
Yeah.
can we go back a minute
Mhm.
to before that, page 81? I'm a little confused about the two charts, 8A and 9A, that say Millwood percent owner households experience cost burden, and yet underneath it, it says persons of color. So we've jumped from households to persons.
It was how it was worded by Commerce. So the persons of color is the household, but it's classified as a persons of color. It's the way they did the chart. Or the way, actually, I can't even say that, it's the way HUD did the chart.
Seems like you're mixing apples and oranges here. You've got households and.
But it's a household that classifies as persons of color.
I know we talked about that at the
Yeah.
last meeting.
But a household of color could have just one person that's of color.
Well, it's the primary
Right.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Oh.
but now we're talking individuals rather
Oh,
than
okay.
households.
I see what you-
One thing I wanted to point out, sorry, on this page too, is the little asterisk. If you notice, Bobby, or a
Yes.
little caveat statement, I have carried that through everything. It's in the RDI analysis too.
And at some point, we should probably explain even more specifically that that means that these numbers have to be taken. See, I found a chart online that indicated you needed to take these numbers, consider these numbers carefully, or something or other, because they are not necessarily valid given the small.
Statistical representation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got a question on page 82. We're talking about, the extremely low income, very low income, low income. And we've got to try and address those different measures. With minimum wage, the current economy, rent increases, how do we, Millwood, control or assist these situations?
By allowing multiple housing types is number one. By reducing barriers, we'll go through this a little bit.
Okay.
Reducing barriers to development, allowing the multiple housing types, allowing more streamlined processes. There's various things we can do. Can we control the market? No. And I'll actually go through this. I actually have it in
Right,
here a little
okay.
further down.
Okay.
So then I also have a question about the assumption that if you can afford to buy a house, you should, and otherwise you're down renting, and this is a problem. I mean, like, we've got, 29 units of senior apartments that are designed for somebody who owned a house, was able to have a house, but wanted to downsize, not worry about their yard and the upkeep and all of this stuff, and rent an apartment. Yet we're calling that out as, this is proof that we don't have enough housing being built, affordable housing being built, because these people should be able to afford houses.
This is referring to a four-person household, a standard, like, family, four-person household. I can clarify that if you want me to.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, there's some assumptions here that the Department of Commerce thinks that if you can afford a house, you should buy a house.
Yeah, right,
And live in a house that you own.
yeah.
And actually, generally speaking, particularly in younger generation, they don't think that's true at all.
Right.
They don't wanna buy a house, they don't wanna buy a car, they can do without all that.
What
And they
generation
should
are
be
you
allowed
talking
to
about? I'm confused. What generation are you talking about? What generation are you talking about?
Oh, 20 to almost 40.
I don't agree with that either.
I think some.
Generation, what do they call it? Z, Gen Z is a little more that trend. Gen X, Gen Y, not so much.
And it depends a lot on where you live.
Yeah.
I know a couple of guys who live in the DC area, they don't wanna buy a house, they don't wanna buy a condo, they don't wanna buy a car. They wanna rent for the rest of their lives.
Probably don't wanna live in Millwood either.
Exactly. Which is why they aren't here.
They're not ready to plant roots yet.
Well, and there are large metropolitan areas where this is your entire life is renting and using the subway system.
Right.
And you have no need for a car. And renting makes sense, you get to be in the happening part of town and no maintenance and, I mean, it's a valid lifestyle.
Yeah. Well,
It's
downtown-
not Millwood's
Live and work in
lifestyle.
Downtown Spokane is going that way with a lot more apartments and
Be fun if
things
it
right
does, yeah.
downtown, yeah.
All right. Millwood housing market. So a little caveat here, Millwood is too small for almost all data. The guidance actually says when you are as small as we are, you can use Redfin or Zillow for your basic market data. Otherwise, please just use what we say are your AMI percentages, which I did, and I'll caveat that when we get there. But I wanted to put a little bit in here on the market data, and an interesting thing I found, it's a very competitive market in Millwood, obviously. The home prices have increased, but there's been a reduction in price per square foot, which likely means the homes that have sold are larger homes that have not been updated. Because I was like, what does that mean? Okay, so I looked in here. That's usually the result. When you have the higher home price, but the lower price per square foot is because they haven't been updated. So people are selling the older big homes, which could offer conversion opportunities like Mike brought up.
I think that I'd be more comfortable if it said may mean that rather than likely means that.
Okay, could mean.
Yeah,
Okay,
throw the idea out there, but
okay. Okay. There also, as we get a little further in, before I forget to say it, there were some tools that Commerce recommended in their guidance that unfortunately between January and May of 2025 were pulled. So I actually had to contact Commerce and say, I can't prepare the map you want, it's not available, can you help me out here? And so they did. Adequate housing stock, I knew there'd be a lot of discussion what is affordable, even though we'll have a definition section. I wanted to make sure I went through all the components of affordable based on rental, based on owner occupied. It's all contained in this first paragraph there. And then clarifying we're looking at AMI when we're looking at the different income brackets. Because AMI is what we have to utilize for the comp plan. But I also figured this is all AMI data. I figured somebody was going to want to know how does the city of Millwood compare to AMI. So on page 87 or packet page 40, if you look in 2023, the Millwood median household income was $71,875. If you look in 2023 for the AMI, it was $92,100. So it's about a $20,000 difference. So I'm keeping that in mind when we're looking at this stuff too. We have to use AMI, but it's something we need to keep in mind.
So what was that again?
So, Millwood, because you have data from census on Millwood's median household income,
Right.
and then you have the area median income, which is what we have to use for the housing analysis. The area median income in 2023 on page 86, table 6.5, was 92,100 for the 100% AMI. In Millwood in 2023, the median household income was 71,875. So about a $20,000 difference. So when we're talking about area median income and fitting into these brackets, something to keep in mind is that's what we have to use, but is that going to be affordable to actually people in Millwood? So we can't do anything about it, but I wanted to draw your attention to it. And then we talked about barriers. What can the city do to help fit housing into these different categories? Looking at development regulations, looking at process obstacles, utilizing the limited land availability with the environmental constraints, so looking at how best to use our limited land, looking at funding gaps and how we can help with that. And then the things we cannot control, there's nothing we could do about, are state level regulations, inadequate regional transit investments, yada, yada, yada. On page 89, packet page 42, for the city of Millwood, the most likely factors contributing to housing affordability issues that the city can address are development regulations, we have to look at those. Process obstacles, the Millwood code is confusing. We need to make it clearer. Offsetting limited land availability and addressing funding gaps. Additionally, continued coordination with Spokane Transit for transit system improvements can contribute to reducing affordable housing barriers in Millwood. The minimal development that Millwood has had and or approved in recent years is trending in the direction of meeting local needs and maximizing permitted densities. Barriers to housing development are discussed more in section 6.6 below. Okay. Next one, section 6.5. This is the section that I have gone back and forth and refined based on Commerce's comments. Everything in this section is intertied, so we have to be very, very careful if anything at all is tweaked, because each table reflects upon each other, if that makes sense. The first table, and these are all the ones required by Commerce, is assumed affordability of housing type by income level. In the guidance, ADUs were recommended to be put in the 50 to 80% category. I talked with Commerce and I said, in UR1, I do not think they're going to be in the 50 to 80% category based on what I believe will be put in there. It's more likely 80 to 100. I said based on the quantity of people that have talked to me about ADUs, I gave a rationale for it, and they said, okay, that's fine, go ahead and put in 80 to 100. And then that plays into how it's allocated. So we list the zone category, we list the typical housing types allowed. This reflects back to what we have in our land use section with the descriptions. So if we take out courtyard apartments in UR2, for example, I'm going to circle that right now, I'd have to update it here for consistency as well. Residential UR3, same housing types we listed, C2, C1, and then I. And it goes in each one of the assumed affordability, and it's based on Commerce guidance minus the knowledge about ADUs and the fact that some, because of our variety of housing in UR3, it could go up to 120. A lot of UR3 type zones would only go to 80. So, talk through that with them. Then that led into table 6-9. Table 6-9 is based on the land capacity analysis and goes into the land available for infill development. That's exactly what was presented. acres after the market factor reduction that we have to take out, assumed residential density. I will say that I talked long and hard with Commerce on this, and I said anybody that has approached me are using the bulk density discussions. Bulk density is not necessarily assumed density, but the argument was that it is what is allowed. And because everybody is talking with me about a bulk density, it doesn't make any sense to come up and create an assumed density. So we were able to use a bulk density. There is no bulk density for C2, C1, or I1. So therefore, I had to go through and use the mixed use building, for example, because we had that. Came through and calculated a one dwelling unit per 2250 square feet, which would make sense if UR3 is 1 per 2500, because you're getting a little more dense. C1, I carried over the same, because it would be mixed use. I1, for the temporary housing, they give a chart in the guidance that goes through all these different temporary and emergency housing projects across the state. They go anywhere from like 30 beds to 150 beds. Obviously, 150 beds doesn't make sense for Millwood, nor would it make sense when we have an allocation of 5. So I used the 40 bed, which got us to a gross of 6.52. When we get to the net, it puts it at 5.
Now, are we required to have our own emergency housing?
We are not required, we are required to plan for it.
Okay,
Yes. So if a provider came in and said, Millwood, I want to build one here, where can I do it? I would say C1 or I1, and I1 can accommodate 5 beds.
now, in the past, haven't we banded together with the rest of the county to cite essential facilities of some kind or other?
These aren't necessarily essential public facilities, these are what we are allocated by every jurisdiction. And
So this is a new
this is new. Yes.
category this time, yeah, okay.
Yep. You are correct in a regional essential public facilities nature. A detention center, for example. Next table plays off of 6.9. Table 610 is summary of capacity by zone. And I will tell you, I didn't have this chart in originally because I didn't like the assigned zone category requirement. And the reason I didn't like it is you had to pick one zone to put them in.
Could you say that again, please?
Yes, this table, 610, I originally did not have. Commerce said I needed to add it. The reason I needed to add it is it's a required table for the analysis to fill in a gap. The reason I didn't like it is because you had to pick one assigned zone category. Well, in Millwood, you have single family in UR1, and then we can go up to duplex, triplex, or cottage. You know, low density. Okay, that's not a big deal. UR2 moderate. Okay, not a big deal. UR3 currently has everything from single family to multifamily, but yet I have to put it in the low-rise multifamily category because you had to pick one. It didn't make sense for Millwood, but I had to do it. So, and then I used the same category, low-rise multifamily, but I added a mixed-use parentheses on C2 and C1. Light industrial is your temporary emergency housing, and then they have you put ADUs pulled out separately. The other thing you have to do is when we talked about allowing ADUs as part of the density or not, the reason it really doesn't help us much is because the guidance says the maximum you can consider for ADUs. I mean, if every lot here, we could have 150 ADUs. I can't calculate it that way. You can use a maximum of 10% participation rate. When I used a 10% participation rate, they came back and said, really? That's the maximum participation rate. What have you had so far? Well, our ADU standards are pretty restrictive, but I can tell you what people are asking. And they're like, can you look at that again? So I dropped it to a 5% participation rate. We still can meet our numbers fine. But that's why ADUs, counting towards the density, actually didn't help a huge amount.
We have a lot.
We
have a lot now.
They aren't registered though is the problem because they didn't start counting them until 2010.
Oh, so we're talking ADUs after 2010 only?
No, I have no data on them because a lot of ADUs in Millwood that we think they have an ADU, but they didn't permit it necessarily as an ADU. Or they weren't tracked on the data until after 2010. So when you look at Millwood's chart, we don't have any ADUs listed according to the data. We know we have ADUs.
I mean, I can go down the list.
Oh,
of
I know. Yeah. So, and I know we will have ADUs because that's probably my second most, or actually my primary, between that and short plats are the most questions I answer.
One, right, because it went to the hearing exam.
We know we have one, well, it's under construction, but yes. Actually, we know we have multiples, but, that is why I couldn't put it heavier on ADUs, is because commerce restricts you so much on them. Okay, next one, 611. Now we're into the HAP chart you've heard so much about. That is the chart. 612 is how Millwood meets our requirements. We are required to allocate up to 106 units in 39, 21 in the different income brackets. Through all this analysis, we are at 121 units plus 65 ADUs plus 5 temporary. Divided out amongst these categories, we meet every one of them when we use the assumed affordability that I put in the upper chart. And after this, I had a headache.
You're not the only one.
And I will leave it at that on that. Barriers we already covered, I just went through more. And then because we have a separate chapter for our goals, policies, objectives, I took an example and ran it through here so that they could see that it meets in the housing section. Racially disparate impacts, I'm gonna skip over because we're gonna do the analysis. And that jumps us to page 97 of or page 50 of the packet. And table 613, this is provided straight out of the Commerce guidance. When we get to the development regulations, we need to go back and look at this and see how we can reduce some of our barriers based on this chart.
You said we skipped over the racially disparate.
Because I'm gonna cover it in the analysis.
So I've got a question about one of the statement on page 95.
Okay. In the RDI, okay. Do you want me to cover it here or in the RDI?
Well, we'll bring it up here and then
Okay.
we'll have it in mind as we do the other. Millwood's racial distribution has gotten less diverse since 2015. I question that.
That's based on the charts that I've been provided.
That it doesn't meet the common sense criteria, and I'm coming up with some different numbers, census numbers and stuff that don't match.
This is back to the
If-
Commerce
If
charts.
we get back
Yeah.
to the individuals, you know, the Commerce charts are made where? Based on what data?
They're based on the HUD CHAZ tables. They're referenced at the bottom. And then Commerce incorporates them in, and I believe they said HUD tables do not provide percentages, so that is what they include is the percentages in there.
They just, I'm not sure that the Commerce tables are consistent with the census tables.
It's what we're provided.
We can't use census. where
We
they
have to
actually
use the
are-
Commerce data.
Where we're actually counting individuals, we cannot use, we have to use somebody's estimate instead. Is that what you're
When
saying?
it comes to this, I have to use the Commerce data.
Well, that is crazy. It seems like these are done, Commerce, this is which Commerce?
Washington State Department of
Washington
Commerce.
State, okay, so this is done in Olympia.
Well, we have representatives over here as well.
But it seems like at some point, when it gets down to the individual local jurisdiction, if something is off, there should be a
Well,
way
and
to
that would
fix
be a
it.
good question to email me and I can send it off to Commerce.
You know, as we get into it, and, you know,
Yeah.
I didn't have enough time to do enough research. I was picking up 3 different numbers for the 2020 census. online, but there's enough of a question there that I kind of feel like we need to dig into it a little bit, because, and this would indicate from what we've got here that 50 people of color moved out of Millwood in those 5 years. I find that hard to believe.
And is that in a commerce table or is that, well, and it'll be in the RDI.
We'll get
yeah,
into it as we,
Yeah.
but I mean, it just, something feels a little off.
Yeah. I think it's really happened, so, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah,
something's off.
my question that.
Okay, so that's it for the modifications to the draft comprehensive plan, land use and housing elements. Anybody have any other questions on that before we jump into the racially disparate impacts? Okay. Does anybody need a break? Okay, well, before I say that, let's ask Amanda, how long is it gonna take us to
I am
get
gonna
to?
go as quick as possible.
Well, I mean, is that
I'm
5 minutes?
guessing about 20 minutes.
Okay.
Is it reasonable to expect us to give this the attention it deserves in?
This is the introduction to it. Feel free to look through it at home and we can discuss additional information at the next meeting, or I can respond to questions or forward them on to Commerce.
Okay.
All right.
And just so you know, all of this has been posted on the website and advertised too for the public to have access to.
All right, well, if everybody's good with charging ahead, let's charge ahead.
All right, so I was
4B.
Yes, 4B. I was provided a guide for addressing racially disparate impacts. Boom, 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 boom. Follows these steps: engaging the community, analyzing data, evaluating policies, which I've gone back and done. We'll talk about that. Revising as needed, review and update regulations. Step 5 is where we get into the development regulations. Key findings are exactly what we had in the comp plan portion. Based on EWU racial covenants project, 33% of the parcels in Millwood still have racial covenants. Based on data provided by the Washington State Department of Commerce, included in the comprehensive plan, chapter 4 that we went over, Millwood's racial distribution has gotten less diverse since 2015, while Spokane County as a whole has gotten slightly more diverse. And we'll cover these further down. Between 2015 and 2020, Millwood's Hispanic or Latino of any race percentage increased by 1%, while persons of color decreased by 3%. Refer to that chart. According to 2022 ACS 5-year estimates, 2.1% of the Millwood population speaks a language at home other than English. Almost 40% of Millwood's total households fall into the extremely low, very low, and low income categories. The majority of Millwood white households fall into the moderate income to above median income, while the majority of Millwood's households of color fall into the extremely low income or low income. In 2015 versus 2020, income category percentage only changed slightly when looking at all households, but significant changes were recorded for various households of color. Based on data provided by Washington State Department of Commerce, included in Chapter 6, households of color have a slightly higher owner versus renter percentage in Millwood, while Hispanic or Latino of any race households are predominantly renters and white households are predominantly owners. Cost burden and rental affordability are a challenge for Millwood, especially for persons of color and Hispanic Latino residents, which can result in racially disparate impacts. 43% of Millwood persons of color are cost burdened or severely cost burdened compared to only 18% of white residents. 56% of Millwood residents are Hispanic or Latino of any race are cost burdened, but none are severely cost burdened. Both owner and renter households experience cost burden. Overall, renter households have higher percentages of cost burden compared to owner households. Millwood is lacking rental units for the extremely low and moderate income brackets, with an excess of units in the very low income and low income brackets. And based on data from the Washington State Department of Commerce, Millwood is at low risk for displacement with no social vulnerability, no demographic change, and an accelerating market trend. However, examples of seniors and young adults being priced out of Millwood did arise in community feedback. Historical context, I'm going to skip over that. Millwood has a history, that we'll just say that.
So I'm wondering at the the words still have racial covenants. I mean, of course,
They still have, they're on the
it's
deeds,
on the record.
yeah,
It's currently on the record, and of course, it's still currently on the record because until just a couple years ago, it was illegal to remove it from the record.
so is that on the very first bullet point?
I mean, it's over and over again
Okay.
throughout here, just,
Yeah.
I mean, still, I think, gives a different impression, because it almost implies that it's still relevant.
How would you word it?
I just leave out still, that have racial covenants.
Oh, okay, so take out still, okay.
Yeah.
All right, and real quick,
There wasn't a decision to have them still be there.
I guess I think that makes sense.
okay. See notes. Okay. And, so again, you have a lot of light reading if you wanna go over the history, but it's been not just Millwood, it's throughout the US. I won't beat up the Covenants map or Bill's neighborhood anymore. I beat him up pretty good last time. But these are examples from each neighborhood and the type of covenant in it. We have about 8 examples.
So I also wonder, there's the statement in the teeny tiny print here about, were some of many tools used by white segregationists. I think that's assuming some
Where's that?
intent and knowledge that we
Which page
don't.
are you on?
Page
Well, it happens over and over again, but
57.
page 57 has it in
Real
that tiny print.
small.
Oh, I didn't, that's straight from the Covenants Project,
Yeah,
so,
I think it's oversimplifying a complicated situation. I suspect very few of the people in Millwood were racial segregationists and more were, I don't want the value of my property to be brought down.
but it's from the
Yeah,
Covenant
more.
Project.
That's straight out of the Covenant
Yeah,
project.
this literally
The
snapshots right
Covenant
off the
Project
screen.
is just a.
And then, moving forward, is literally how the community matters moving forward together. It's obviously important to acknowledge Millwood's history, but to move forward in a more inclusive and respectful manner. I talked with, Millwood history enthusiasts and another group about their interest in the city providing assistance with removing these from the deeds, in any way that we could. There's 2 methods, and I think you're aware of the 2 methods, Bobby. Obviously, the one that we could help with would be the, auditor method, not the judicial method.
Isn't that the one where it's still there, but it kind of says it's not, doesn't apply?
It's, yeah,
Yeah,
the
that's,
easier method, yes.
well, it's not just
Yeah.
easier, I think it's more honest.
It's also free.
And it's
Yeah.
free, but I think it's also more honest because you're not erasing it and pretending it never was.
Yeah, well, and even the
When it
erased
has that.
version just blacks it out and then references an archive, but, yeah.
But,
Crazy.
yeah,
So, that's a way we can look towards the future, working with, Historic Preservation Commission, having workshops, bringing the library in who taught some of this stuff, and help homeowners remove them if they want to.
Should we have something in there about how to address that, though?
I didn't because it's analyzing where we're at right now, and that may change. But I have done research on it, talked to folks about it, and saw a lot of interest in getting assistance with it. But I didn't want to reference the process in here in case the process changed.
Okay, I think that's
and
important.
this is the overhead view, huge view too. Huge view is we want to help people.
Yes.
The next is just looking at population, all the way through and kind of comparing it back. So like in 1960, when those covenants were still active, Millwood had a population of 1776, and Millwood Census Tract 110, Division 6 showed 99.8% were white, and there was a black population of 0 and an Asian other population of 3 or 0.02%. 1970, still black population is 0, slight increase in indigenous and Japanese. And you gotta remember in the census, as we talked about, now it will say like persons of color, or before it had everything itemized out. Now we have multi-race. Those things weren't available before, so you gotta, it's just a historical,
You could not be mixed race, you had to choose.
yeah.
So you had to ignore half. If you were half and half, you had to ignore half of yourself and choose. Yeah,
Round
one
up
to
or
put
round
in.
down.
But it still
Exactly.
shows we've slightly
Was-
increased and then gone back down a little bit again. So that just goes through all the
Maybe.
populations.
Now, when I worked this out, between 1980 and 1990, it looks like it changed, but our population changed.
Yeah.
So in 1980, we had 46 not whites, and in 1990, we had 47, if you figure out the percentages.
That's why
Based
I
on the
summarized it
population.
up top.
So basically,
Yeah,
the same people stayed here, it didn't change.
yeah, it
It
did
just
change.
looks like it changed, it
Yeah.
didn't go by throwing in percentages.
And that's why I talked about the 1990, that, because we had the expansion too. Millwood overall had decreased to 1559, followed by a gradual increase. I think that was when, somewhere in here I talked about where Millwood expanded or something.
Yeah.
And then racial distribution, that's out of the, 1990 census. I had to pull a lot of, I went back to the old comp plan and pulled this data out of it. And then 2000, that was from the 2015 comp plan. And then up to figure 12, which is what's in the current comp plan from Department of Commerce that we had in chapter 4.
Yeah, and this is the one that I'm running into.
Well, and this was the one in chapter 4 that we already had covered too.
Right, but when I look online for census data for 2020, one place tells me that it's 87.3% white, and another one, and that shows up over and over on Google results. And the other one is 90.05% white, which shows up over and over on Google results. 92% I could not get to anywhere.
Well, this is from source, U.S. Census Bureau, 2016 to 2020 American Community Survey 5-year estimates, table, whatever, and Washington State Department of Commerce 2023. Those were the tables that I was provided.
We cannot use the 2020 census.
These were the tables I was provided for the RDI.
So I think that we're making some invalid conclusions given our small sample size and the fact that maybe their numbers are a little off.
Well, and put your questions, like I said, email me your questions, I'll send them to Commerce.
You know, because maybe we just want to gloss over that and not make the statement that we've become less diverse, because maybe
Yeah.
we really haven't. Maybe these tables are just giving us a false result, looking like we have.
The next table on page 12, packet page 65, map 2, this is where I could not pull the data. It wasn't available anymore for Millwood. So there's a tool that Commerce had. I hadn't subscribed to it. Millwood hadn't subscribed to it, but Commerce had it. And so they put this chart together, but it didn't really help us much because we're essentially one census block. But it showed the surrounding. And the
Which
diversity.
doesn't tell us a whole lot either.
Yeah.
Well, and if you look at this, the paper mill has 2 different densities of people.
And
Which
when you go down
no
further,
density.
it's even funnier.
Yeah,
So I kept searching because I was bound and determined to find something to at least show. I found this census dots map with a whole lot of caveats because look, there's dots in the Inland Empire paper. And I talked to Commerce about it and they're like, it's probably the same kind of data they had because we are such a small sampling that it's not, you can't get it perfectly. In a big jurisdiction, if you look at one of these analysis in a big jurisdiction, what you can do is show basically, oh, there's a concentration of persons of color in the northwest portion of the city. Oh, and that's where the rental affordability is an issue. We can't do that. We have to look at the city as a whole.
or if you look at Spokane and you look
Yeah.
at the old red line maps,
Yes.
you can see still.
Yeah. The closest Millwood has is looking at which neighborhoods still have the racial covenants, which is not UR1, it is Millwood Homes and a whole lot of that area.
But I don't think that there's any difference. I really don't think there is currently any difference as to who lives there.
Nowadays, no,
Now,
there isn't.
it's just
Yeah.
wherever they found the
Yeah.
house that they
The
wanted
whole
to buy.
reason for that data project and that research is that step one to determine whether or not you had racially disparate impacts. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I'm
the
totally.
fact is we do.
I'm totally for that. It's just, I think that Millwood's problem is not a distribution of minorities.
No, it
Millwood's
isn't.
problem is not having attracted enough to be as diverse as we'd like to be.
Yes. Okay. And then there's also, as I was going through here, just some information. Other jurisdictions had a lot more data differences, but I put in map 4 and map 5 that just talked about basically the generational poverty. I guess that's the word you refer to it. But it's high income compared to how their children are, or low income parents compared to how their children. And it was followed over from the time they were little guys up to age 35.
So again, where did they get these numbers?
Census. This one is census. And then, okay, next, page 16, Opportunity Atlas Data Summary. So this just summarizes what's on those maps, and it's really for informational only. I actually found it very interesting about the women versus men category a little bit. I've just found that interesting. Next charts are out of the comp plan, again, from chapter 4 that we already went through. Going, figure 6-3 is what I didn't cover in the housing section because I'll cover it here. This just divides out the percentage of owner and renter housing, but I summarized it in our key findings. 83% versus 44%, etc. Page 19 has the next chart. This is Millwood total housing cost burden by racial and ethnic group. This is where I got the key summary findings. Going on to the next charts, again, referenced in the key summary findings. These are the charts they came from. And Bobby's caveat statement. And figure 21, continuing in, we saw a little bit of this in the comp plan. Figure 6-7, comparing the renter and for Millwood, the renter for Spokane County, and summarizing. And then summarizing that these figures suggest that residents from some racial and ethnic backgrounds face higher economic challenges compared to their white counterparts. Rapid increases in property values can exacerbate affordability issues, particularly for communities that have historically been marginalized. And that goes into the act that was passed in 2023. That's actually a bonus. Millwood would qualify for that. Goes into displacement, which we don't have to worry about. Millwood doesn't have displacement. And then it goes into the policy evaluations. And on the policy evaluations, I had to go through all the policies we just refined and compare them to the criteria for RDI analysis. Oh,
Separate issue.
and they gave a lot of guidance on, this is where I cannot use the word design or character when it comes to neighborhood anymore, because that was automatically a challenge. So, scale and form. And so, while we did a great job on round 1 on the policies, there's still a few tweaks that we need to make, and I'm hoping we'll get the okay to do that tonight. Page 25, packet page 78,
Yeah.
there's an approaching.
Ask a question on page 24.
Yes.
Consider methods to improve the economic vitality of the Millwood business community is listed as an NA, not applicable.
Because it doesn't affect, it's the only reason it's in there is because I put all the goals in there, but it doesn't exactly reflect housing and racially disparate impacts. There are some others that do, and so that's where I cross-referenced them.
Okay,
It has no effect on
Yeah.
racial disparity and affordability in housing. And
I guess I was thinking about business ownership or something that,
This is only for housing.
oh, okay.
And so I put all the general goals, but then when it came to the vision and the policies and the implementation, they're only the housing ones. So under our land use element vision statement, and I took out all the track changes, so this is how it would read clean under the vision statement now, it's approaching. And the reason it's approaching is because some types of zoning and regulations, including minimum lot size requirements, restrict the types of homes that can be built. Then it goes into the research. The way that I would recommend wording the second half of that goal is larger residential lots, take out the types, are envisioned on the east side of the city, while other residential areas of the city will maintain more dense development patterns. Just taking out those references of character, that will help. And I think that makes us then supportive.
Okay.
Okay. Check. Next. First one we got a challenge on was our goal 6, a built environment reflecting Millwood's community character and history. There's the character word. I'm like, oh. So I suggested refining that to a built environment reflecting Millwood's history that is incorporated into public projects such as the Interurban Trail and Millwood Park, as well as design guidelines for the Millwood Historic District.
But that leaves out a huge amount that was intended in that.
It covers the historic district and any public project.
Yes, but it leaves out 3/4 of the town.
But they're not in the historic district, so.
But they are historical. The only reason they're not in the historic district is because nobody's taken the time to fill out the paperwork, not because they aren't.
Oh, no. The way this is worded is the historic district.
I
so-
know.
Yeah, any house in there I included in this,
Right.
even though they're not registered.
I'm saying there's other parts, that is not the only historically significant part of this town. It's just the only one that somebody's filled out the paperwork and got the designation for.
Well, there's only one Millwood Historic District though, on the registers and everything, it's the Millwood
Yeah,
Historic District. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
someone took the time
The-
to fill out the paperwork
And
and
created. the-
create it. The others are also valuable and significant, they just have not had the paperwork done to.
They also have a lot of RDI issues, and that's the problem. So I tried to maintain this where it would preserve the character and the history to even use that on the public projects and then on the historic district.
And this is basically just pulling away one of our goals that's been there for a very long time, that was developed out of a lot of community input and support. And we're basically just trashing it and saying we can't use
But
it
we
anymore.
we cannot have it as worded, it's a challenge.
Right, as worded, can we come up with better wording to include more of the city, not just?
Can I task you with taking a look at G6 then, Bobby?
Okay.
Okay.
I'll
Knowing we have to keep to scale and form is our biggest thing. We can't use character, we can't use
design, can't use
Yeah.
design, why not?
because it can be referred that the neighborhood was designed to be white only. I can give you the RDI guide if you want it, but trust me, you don't want it.
Well, I mean, maybe, because there's gotta be some way to, some architectural way to describe things that is not racially loaded. Do we want to take a break?
Yeah, let's go on record. Let's take a 5-minute break. Let's reconvene at 7:59.
Sorry, staying
No,
hydrated
no,
today.
no,
Oh, okay.
it's time.
Okay.
Good news is
Oh.
we're done.
Sorry. We need to start incorporating a fan for summer in here.
And I have things on my feet, cause I'm.
So you don't have to get up later.
Oh,
Thank you.
well, I was gonna guess it was you.
I don't know, it's like, you know, there's this guy Joe that's sitting back there in the corner.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody would show up after the market, but apparently.
I know, I actually forgot all about it. I was late, I was eating dinner and I looked at the clock and went, yeah, I gotta go.
This is important stuff.
It is important.
It's really important stuff, but
It's a lot.
it's a huge amount. Oh my gosh.
I know LaDonna Dement, she probably would have been here, but she's actually over in Bellevue, so.
All of this is available for 2-hour viewing experience.
Fast forward through the.
Yeah. Really.
She's hot, I have a jacket on my
Almost
feet.
there.
Go back and forth.
I wonder if we're gonna have like this.
Sorry, Lisa, I should have told you.
I should have known that.
This picture section is the heavy lift part.
It's like one big happy family.
It's a lot to like stay focused for after a full day of work. It's hard to, like I'm losing focus.
To study for it, and I didn't get study for it at the level that I would like
Yeah.
to be, just
It's a big one.
too much.
Thanks, Mike. Got it.
You're welcome.
I heard they opened the kitchen at Whistlepunk.
Yeah,
Have to try it. Wonder if it's good.
not stuff I can eat, unfortunately, but it's really cool that they're doing it.
No pizza stuff, no gluten.
It's not the gluten, it's the spices and the cheese.
Oh, bummer.
No dairy, no spices, no garlic, absolutely no garlic.
No good
No
garlic
garlic?
in your life.
Oh,
Oh, Bobby.
We use wine, we use ale, we use all kinds of things that have flavor and are flavor
There's no
enhancers,
garlic.
but no garlic.
no. I couldn't live without that.
And even onions.
We're close.
No garlic and onions.
No onions, I can do a few chives.
Oh, boy.
You know?
Do you have chocolate at least?
Yes.
Okay, well then
Yes,
fine.
desserts, I'm high on
Chocolate.
dessert.
Alright.
Wine and chocolate.
Chocolate and wine, I could go without garlic and onions if I had to.
Yeah.
Did you go to Wingstop after, what, 2 meetings ago? You were gonna.
You know, I looked at it, it was too expensive, I didn't want to pay that much for wings.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm cheap.
I think we got
Yeah.
a couple suggestions gonna come at us here.
I can tell you.
Okay.
Plus, this is a lot of grease.
Oh.
I do one of my running paths. I run like by the stop, and it's just inhaling grease.
Just going through the parking lot, you get greasy smell, so.
Yeah.
So your sidewalks got cleaned, right?
My what?
Sidewalks got cleaned,
Oh yeah.
that was the problem.
Yep. Yep.
For Mother's Day, they went out a couple different times,
It's nice.
cleaned everything up
It's nice. Yeah.
until the construction started.
I know everything's gonna be dirty.
You won't tell me, will you?
Next 4 months.
Well, you can imagine where I
Tina,
live.
you're a trooper.
It's not gonna be even worse for you.
Are we ready to
It's gonna be rough.
Yes.
How it's gonna affect you and your business and.
Let's come back to order. We'll do a roll call. Commissioner Rickard,
Here.
Commissioner Beasy,
Here?
Commissioner Molitor,
Here.
Commissioner Wu.
Here.
Commissioner Ankey's here also. Back to you, Amanda.
Alrighty, resuming back on page 26, Bobby will take a look at the challenged one at the top and see about finding ways to reword it that works. Next one, G08, strong neighborhoods and active community groups was the goal. It's an approaching, it can be good, it can be bad, so we need to clarify some way the way I proposed was foster strong, inclusive neighborhoods and empower diverse community groups to equitably shape local decision-making.
I think you left out the most important word in the previous one, and that's the word active.
Did I say active? Foster strong, inclusive neighborhoods and empower diverse community groups.
Strong neighborhoods and active community groups.
Diverse. Oh, I have a diverse community groups.
Yeah,
So,
I think active's more, I think diverse is, if you have
Diverse and active?
inclusive neighborhoods, I think you're gonna have diverse community groups. I don't know if you need to call it out separate, but you want to encourage active community groups.
Okay. Can we say and empower, active and diverse community groups?
If
Or
you-
active diverse
If you
community
feel better with the
Okay.
word diverse, I'm not picky, but I think active is important.
Active is in,
All right.
okay. All right, we are good there, go on down. Next, approaching is P11, align new housing design and remodels with the historic fabric of the surrounding neighborhood. The policy could be modified as follows. And again, Bobby, I'll probably turn this over to you. Within the Millwood Historic District, align new housing design and remodels with historic fabric of the surrounding neighborhood. I thought we could get there with that one by leaving design in because it's referring to the district. Would you like to have a crack at that one as well?
Possibly, and I think for the rest of Millwood, we could get there with our, scale and form and,
Yeah.
you know, because
Do you think
that's
this one's
the-
okay then with the suggested changes?
Well, I think we should have because takes it away from everybody except the historic district. And
So can I give that, I'll give a Bobby on that one too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for volunteering,
I
Bob.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Voluntold.
Voluntold. Next one, implementation action item number 9, heighten the awareness of land use development and nuisance code violations across the city by providing resource brochures and outline process to address each violation type. When I initially read that, I didn't think about the viewpoint that Commerce put in their guidance, that code enforcement policies can often cause families of lower incomes to be disproportionately fined and possibly displaced from a neighborhood. Displacement is currently low in Millwood, however, it needs to be considered with code enforcement processes. So, I read what it was and I rewrote, possibly based on heighten the awareness of what constitutes nuisance code violations across the city by providing resource brochures and outlining the process to address each violation type with an emphasis on education and voluntary compliance.
Which is what we do exactly.
Exactly anyway.
So if we just spell it out, that's no big
So
deal.
we're okay on that one? Okay. Yay.
Well done.
Our next challenge, page 29, packet page 82. Implementation 18, enforce the city codes for land use development and public nuisances impacting neighborhood properties. As outlined above, code enforcement can cause families with lower incomes to be disproportionately fined and possibly displaced from a neighborhood. This implementing action could be modified as follows. Enforce the city codes for land use, development, and public nuisances impacting neighborhood properties, period. Education and voluntary compliance should be utilized prior to issuing fines or citations, and possibly utilize partnerships with community organizations to assist vulnerable residents with meeting code requirements without displacement.
That's nice.
Okay?
Good job.
Okay. And then 27, evaluate and improve if necessary zoning regulations related to housing density and type to ensure compatibility with historic neighborhoods. Challenge, in order to address previous racially disparate impacts, this implementing action could be modified as follows. Evaluate and improve if necessary zoning regulations related to housing density and type to ensure compatibility with historic neighborhoods, while also addressing and mitigating any racially disparate impacts that regulations may have on housing access and affordability.
Looks good.
Okay? Yay! Oh, number 39, our last one. Update zoning, development, and land division rate. Oh, this was mine. Yes, that's right. Remember how we went back and forth?
We thought we fixed it last time, and now you're taking the word design away.
This is
from
where I
us.
got scale and
You
form.
took character away, and now you're taking away design.
So I took away character, I'm taking away design, and we're going neighborhood scale and form for the win, cause it's totally RDI compliant.
Yes, but there's gotta be some way to scale and form.
That's why I use those terms when we were going through land use and housing too.
It doesn't totally explain what we're trying to do. No, it just doesn't quite get there. I mean, form,
I get why we can't use design.
And character, yeah, which is originally what I had.
Okay,
Skill, yeah.
good work, Amanda.
Thanks.
All right, any questions on that before we move on? Okay, well, that brings us to public remarks. I see we do have a citizen out in the audience. I applaud you for staying here through that whole presentation.
You are well educated now.
If you'll come up to the podium and state your name and your address and limit your remarks to 3 minutes, that would be awesome.
I'll try to limit I just have a couple comments. Tina Seifert, 10507 East Empire Avenue. Thank you again. This is like totally, holy cow. I love all of you guys. It's a lot of, like you said, a little light reading. Just a couple comments that I kind of noticed and I wanted to bring to your attention. I don't know if this is the time or the place to do this because I was just winging it sitting back here. On the zoning maps, when you're looking at talking about apartments for 3-story and now possibly 4-story. If you look at your one and then on basically Butler and Trent, okay, and then the general, the C1, UR1 right there, south of Empire is butted up to C1. So C1 is going to allow, just comment, allow possibility for 4-story, 3 or 4-story apartments and or hotels in those areas, which I know that they're all businesses right now, but hopefully one will go away. That's my own personal thought. If those are allowed, and it also actually kind of goes down to your flight zone, which would be on the other side for the C1 area, right in that little corner. With the residents that live there, that a majority of them on Empire are residents, and so their backyard will be overseen by the apartments, 2nd, 3rd, 4th story up. If you look at the apartment complex that's east of Butler, they are this far, I swear, this far from the properties that were right next to them. Their balconies overlook right into those people's yards. So just food for thought on that. Concerning, don't want other issues that come up if a plan is, or an application is applied for to put something like that up. And like you said, do you want a 3-story duplex or 3-plex in your backyard or across the street from you? Kind of, just food for thought. And actually, for reference, the one picture that she had here on page 54, packet number 7, this corner lot, that is the one that is actually kitty corner right across the street from me. That is the UR1, and then the C1 is directly behind it, which is now Hildebrands Auto or whatever it is. So just for reference. And then quick question, and I don't know if it's really a question, but kind of clarification, Amanda, and I know I've kind of struggled with this since the very beginning. On page 63, packet number 16, you talk about the additional 49 persons or 14% must plan for 14% of Spokane County's housing growth or up to 106 units.
Yes.
So 49 people would be, to me, 49 units if a single person is living there. And then on page 66, your reference is 11%.
Yes.
So is that 14% or 11%? Sorry.
So, on which were the two? Sorry.
So
eight.
on page 66, you reference 11% of the house, the growth.
66 is 11%.
And then on page 63, sorry, I'm kind of going backwards,
Uh-huh.
it says 14%.
Okay, so planning for a 0.11% rate of growth over the next 20 years for an allocated population of 1974. And page 64? 63.
At the very bottom.
As discussed in section 4.4, the city of Millwood must plan for 0.5% of Spokane County's growth, equating to an additional 49 persons. Additionally, the city must plan, population versus housing. This is what we were talking about with Bobby.
Okay,
The housing, we were allocated 106 units. It is separate from the population, and it accommodates a historic underproduction of housing.
okay, thank you. That was more of a clarification. And then, and I don't know if you can answer this, and again, Amanda, this is for you. When is 10218 East Empire gonna start construction? Magnolia. Do you know? I know construction's already done. That portion.
So I actually talked with them today about some options. I don't wanna talk about it here. Can we do a caveat after? and I'll-
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll kind of fill you in.
Okay, all right, thank you again for all of you guys. You guys are doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. All right, that brings us to the city planner report.
All right, so very last page. There we go. All right. So y'all know what you've done. So permit licenses, we've had some deck reviews. Some of the fence permit was reissued, redecided, and then appealed. Continuing review on the mixed use building. Whistle Punk finished out their commercial kitchen, so they now have a commercial kitchen over there, so we'll have some good food coming in. The variance for Laura, decision was issued and the variance was approved. Empire demolition, condition on behalf of utilities.
It is on behalf of utilities.
So because that one had some specific, utility requirements, Public Works reached out to me and said, when this got demoed, we need to make sure they take care of this and this. So I coordinated that with City of Spokane Valley for the demo permit.
City,
Cause city demo permits go through City of Spokane
Right,
Valley.
so capping off the water
Yeah.
line, capping off the sewer, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Some things that we didn't have to deal with on the other one. Euclid wall sign permit review, and this is actually gonna be a fantastic example when we go through our sign code update, so remind me about Margie's building. Because, it was a very interesting review.
Which building is this?
The little brick one.
the brick one that they painted white and put plastic, she always says plastic flowers in front of it.
Oh,
and-
that building.
White,
Yeah.
yellow.
Yeah, and she wanted a sign on the front and on the back. We make allowances on the front when the lot lines are basically the building in C2. We don't have those same allowances on the back. So she ended up not doing the back sign because she would have had to get approval from the adjacent
The
property,
people that own the
property owner.
property, that it would-
Because it would have, been right on the property line and the signage code has certain restrictions, so. It's an interesting example we can refer back to. And then periodic update, y'all know where we're at on that, so. The last thing I'll, say is, we officially received notice that SB 5558 passed, signed, by the governor, and now all of our periodic update is due December 31st, 2026. For the grant, of course, it'll probably be December 15th, but the important part of this is I no longer have to pick and choose during implementation. We have to do the housing part first. And then I gotta go back and do the other stuff. It's all due in December, so I can bust straight down and make sure we don't have inconsistencies. I was doing a happy dance for
That's
this.
awesome.
Is that it? You're
That is it.
Any questions for Amanda? Perfect, okay, let's go to commissioner comments. Commissioner Rickard. Commissioner Beasy.
Just recognize the huge amount of work involved in this. I don't put quite there yet, but wow, there's a lot to pull together and
Commissioner Malter.
I have a couple of things. One is, and I don't know if this is the proper way to, where to bring it up, but I think the planning commission should be included in city council issues, especially using the mayor's issue with credit cards and what's being done. And I tried to go to the website, and Bobby and I touched on that, our website that's being upgraded, not real easy to use. And that's the only way I could find out exactly what's going on with the city council and with Mayor Freeman and auditing and cross-checks and checks and balances. So I think the planning commission should be notified, email or whatever it is, so that we're more in the loop and not kept out of the loop. The other thing is that I think in the paper just recently, Millwood pays price for the Mills tax appeal. And it says the rest of the amount taxing entity like a free government, blah, 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 result of the Mills depreciation, meaning the rest of the properties in the same district are left to pick up the slack, which means that taxes for residents in Millwood are going to continue to increase. And the reason I'm saying that is that I think we should be very judicial in some of the things that we have planned for how we're going to spend the tax dollars for the residents of Millwood. Just make that comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Wu.
I do not have any comments.
Just a couple things for me personally. I share Commissioner Malter's thoughts in regards to, I think the city, somebody from the city, and whether that would be Brian Wurst or whoever, should keep the volunteer boards apprised of what's going on with that, with the mayor. And when I say that, not only Planning Commission, but I think the Historic Preservation Commission and any of those other entities that are involved with that. Reason being is friends and neighbors know that we sit on these various commissions and we get questions. The one thing that I thought about after last meeting when I actually made some public remarks, and we had some other citizens get up and tell us what they've heard. Well, we can't put any weight to that because it's hearsay. And at least if we were apprised of an official remark, I happened to bump into the city attorney at an event last week, and basically I was told almost no comment. So, not sure what's going on there, and but I just wanted to say that. One question I do have, given the construction on Argonne Road that is getting ready to start, who is the owner of the project?
The
Who's
city
paying?
of Millwood.
Yeah, is it the city of Millwood?
Yeah.
Okay, so curious, with the new regulation that all public works projects over $2 million have to have apprenticeship utilization on them, I'm curious who the city has appointed to follow that.
It would be the contractor that's responsible for it.
I would think.
No, there would be somebody in the city that makes sure that the contractor's meeting the goal.
I would, Welch Comer then I guess would be my guess, because they're the engineer of
Okay,
record,
perfect.
but.
Okay, cool, awesome, cool. Other than that, just great work, Amanda. I mean, wow. I do a lot of this stuff myself. I know the hours that go into it. I mean, and it's very tedious, especially.
We have maximized the grants.
So, so the question though that comes up, or in kind of, in respect of everybody's time, do we, anticipate more 2-hour-long, 2.5-hour-long meetings as we go through this process? And if that is the case, is there a way to, maybe bust those up by a special meeting if the other commissioners agree with that, or that's it?
These two sections, I do. So the next meeting, we're currently scheduled to go over any tweaks to these and discuss transportation, EPF, capital facilities, utilities. So it's gonna be just as heavy
Okay.
as this one.
Okay.
Can I caveat that real quick
Please,
too?
please.
So right now, the next meeting would be June 25th, 2025. Our fantastic Lisa will be going on vacation. We do not, right now, have a designated fill-in clerk. So there may be a chance we cannot hold the June 25th meeting. If that occurs and we do not have a clerk for the June 25th meeting, July 1st, 2025 was the next one that we were looking at when Lisa would be back.
July 1st.
July 1st, which is a Tuesday. I'm not available on the 2nd to continue it as a Wednesday, so we went basically just a day under a week. And so I wanted to bring that up while we're also discussing special meetings.
Okay.
But I am hopeful that there will be someone to be able to fill in, so I do not know at this time.
Okay. And the other thing is, I believe, in our pre-meet, we did have a pre-meet. We just, are we having a combined meeting scheduled with the city council?
Yes,
And if so, when is that?
July 8th, I believe it is. I'd have to pull out the public
Okay.
participation,
Yeah.
but I think that's the date. It's their meeting in
Okay.
July.
Okay.
And at 5 o'clock, per the work plan, we're gonna have a combined meeting to go over these chapters. So land use, housing, and how it correlates to transportation, capital facilities, utilities.
Okay.
July 8th, yes. And it'll be 1 hour designated, so obviously way more condensed than this. It'll be more similar to what we went over last July, where I do a presentation with kind of an overview of these components.
Okay, okay, all right. Last question, I've had a chance to read some of the city council meeting minutes. Are we still operating under a mayor pro tem? No, okay, perfect, okay, that's all I have, so.
Just in case we can't do the June 25th meeting, does anybody know of a conflict for July 1st?
Not in concrete.
It's a long ways away.
Yeah. What, you're not planned out 3 months in advance?
It is a holiday week, so.
It is, that's why I'm not available on the 2nd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't do it on the 30th either because we have a special council meeting that night, so we're not gonna be able to do it then. So.
Have to have it in a special place.
So.
There you go.
Okay, I like the way she
I like the way she thinks. Okay,
Good idea.
okay. Okay, well, if no more comments, looks like, we discussed a potential meeting either the 25th or July 1st.
Do we want to schedule a special meeting for sooner to go over these sections again?
Council, or commission?
I'm in favor of that, yeah, if it could.
I'm in favor of having a special meeting to have our meetings not be so long.
Yeah.
It's a kind of, it is a burden personally for me.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get it.
I agree.
It's a long day.
Yeah, for you it's a long day,
Very long.
for me it's
It's been a very long day.
prepping ahead of time, just you can only
Okay,
handle.
so,
So June 11th,
So
we could
much.
just cover the exact same stuff that we covered tonight with hopefully a couple suggestions from Bobby on.
And maybe some input from, on the, why the numbers aren't quite,
Yeah, email me your questions too, and I'll get them to Commerce.
yeah.
So, what's the next date you said was?
Wednesday, June 11th would be 2 weeks before the 25th and 2 weeks after today.
You know what? I am leaving for Boulder, Colorado after work on June 11th,
Okay,
so that won't work for me.
okay.
I have a conflict on the 11th.
School isn't even up.
Okay.
I could push it back a week.
Millwood Council is on the 10th, and you're leaving on the 11th? Okay.
the ninth.
What about the 18th?
I can't be here the 18th.
You can't do the 18th?
Yeah,
I
you're
have
gone.
I have Mamma Mia tickets.
Yeah.
You said June 10th is out?
Well, it's council.
Oh.
And that's when we're having our, well, you're not, no, you guys aren't coming to that one,
Yeah,
but that's council.
we could have a 5 o'clock meeting on the 10th. We'd only have an hour, but
That'd be fine with me.
That's,
is that okay
Yeah.
with you, Lisa?
Um,
Or is that, do you think they might have a special meeting of their own?
I don't foresee a special meeting on that day. It's just, you'd actually only be getting about 45 minutes.
true, cause we gotta
'cause
turn
I
it
gotta-
over.
I gotta turn it over and get,
What about the
So
ninth?
ready.
Monday the ninth?
So we have a combined meeting, oh, never mind, that's July.
Monday's fine.
June 9th?
June ninth, Monday, June ninth? Okay.
Couple an
6 o'clock or 5:30, 5 o'clock?
But what,
I could do 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock.
um,
Either way is fine for me.
Okay. What do y'all prefer, and we can get it noticed up?
6:11 at 5 o'clock?
9, Monday the
6.
ninth.
Monday
Nine.
night,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
At
6.
at what time?
Do you want 5
We're
o'clock or
trying to
6
decide 5 or 6.
or 5:30 even?
So like, maybe 5:30 was worth the difference.
Yeah. That way, if you wanna eat before, you're good, or after. 5:30 on Monday, July 9th?
that's a good compromise.
Okay.
June 9th, 5:30.
Okay.
Special meeting.
Yep.
And we're going over the changes for this.
Exactly the same, yeah.
Bobby has some homework.
Yes.
And that's soon enough that it might actually stay in my brain.
And then maybe at the June 9th meeting, we'll know whether we're going the 25th or the 1st.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
we
Okay.
should know by then.
Anything else, anybody? No. Okay, perfect. Then I
Great
will-
job, Amanda.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Whoa.
We're gonna add one of these long